Hello everyone, first news update for 8th of May. Now it's about 11 o'clock in the morning Moscow time, and I have prepared quite a number of news on some major developments that Russian media and public is paying attention to, and hopefully you will find this episode informative and useful. And if so, please click that like button and leave some commentary about any topic. It might help to deal with the algorithm and reach wider audience, and even better if you can switch from my YouTube channel to my Rumble channel. And if you will watch this episode there, link to my Rumble is under this video in description box and in the pinned comment. That's being said, let's go through some news. And of course, I'm gonna start with the Victory Day truce that has already begun. 72-hour ceasefire proposed by Russian President Vladimir Putin has officially came into effect, with Russian forces halting offensive operations going into first day. And this is despite the surge in Ukrainian drone attacks in the hours before the truce. And when it comes to drone attacks, by the way, yesterday afternoon, Russian Defense Ministry shared with public information that during the previous 24 hours, the regime launched 524 drones, at least, to strike deep into Russian territory, obviously with assistance of NATO and NATO member states. And also, Russian air defense systems managed to destroy not just these 524 drones. Probably number of drones were even higher, but at least 524 of them were intercepted. And also 5 Neptune missiles, 6 JDW bombs, and 2 rockets from HIMARS, US-made HIMARS multi-launcher rocket systems. JDW bombs are also US-made. And clearly this was a biggest attempt to strike deep into Russian territory, largest strike since the beginning of the active phase of hostilities, or since 2022. And that's why RT is basically pointing out that this Victory Day truce is in effect despite significant increase in these long-range strikes on Russia. Press spokesman of the Russian president, Dmitry Peskov, was even asked if Russian president changed his mind after receiving information of this about these hundreds and hundreds of drones that were launched to strike Russia, including capital of Russia, Moscow, where dozens of delegations worldwide are now coming to participate in Victory Day parade. And Peskov, press spokesman of the Russian president, stated that president's decision is in force and the truce will be in effect at 12 o'clock night time, and that's exactly what happened. And when it comes to this truce itself, Kyiv regime officially did not join this truce, this ceasefire, but this morning some propaganda outlets of Kyiv regime start sharing information that Zelensky and his criminal associates issued an order to their armed formations to halt hostilities for next 3 days. It's up to you if you will believe these reports from Ukrainian propaganda outlet. I don't. And even if Zelensky would officially state that they will honor this Victory Day truce, I will still be skeptical, because just recently there was a 30-day truce, energy ceasefire so-called, and every single day Kyiv regime was breaking this truce, right? And unfortunately, there is a quite high risk that during the next 3 days, today, tomorrow, day after, Kyiv regime probably will try to conduct as many terrorist attacks on Russian Federation against Russian people and the guests of the Russian Federation as they possibly can, yet again with the assistance of NATO member states, first of all US, UK and France and Germany. After all, we should keep in mind that to provide the flight path and targeting data for these long-range weapon systems, drones, missiles and so on, Kyiv regime needs intelligence data, satellite navigation, and only several countries in NATO can provide this assistance. US, obviously, France and UK. It's just not even questionable topic, right? So therefore, let's see. Obviously, I will monitor situation and I will report about terrorist activity of Kyiv regime during these days. Unfortunately, I'm quite sure that today, during the evening news on my Rumble, already there will be number of reports about terrorist attacks that Kyiv regime will commit against the Russian citizens, potentially guests of Russian Federation. Of course, I will report about it. When it comes to potential areas in which direction Kyiv regime may and its NATO backers may be focused in their terrorist activity, obviously Moscow is one direction, and Zelensky and his criminal associates were openly threatening with the terrorist attacks on Moscow. Also, Crimean Bridge can be targeted. Just about a week ago, there was a report of Russian Defense Ministry that they intercepted 6 or 8 Storm Shadow cruise missiles. This is British cruise missiles, and those missiles were launched in direction of Crimea, potentially in direction of Crimean Bridge. And maybe that was a kind of rehearsal for London to better organize potential larger scale strike against Crimea Bridge. So therefore, no one probably will be surprised if next 72 hours, formally Kyiv regime, in reality London, will launch dozens of Storm Shadow missiles to strike on Crimea Bridge. And I have no doubts that Kyiv regime will continue shelling borderline regions of the Russian Federation. I mean, hardly anyone can have any doubts about that. In any case, of course, I will monitor the situation, and I will report about criminal activity of this Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky on my news updates, video updates during their evening live stream on my Rumble, and obviously on my Telegram and Twitter X pages. Meanwhile, dear friends, before 3-day ceasefire enter their effect, TASS news agency reported that Russian armed forces liberated settlement of Lipovo in a DPR, settlement located on the northern side of Seversk or southern side of Kupiansk. For reference, dear friends, many of you are familiar with these names, Seversk and Kupiansk, and this Lipovo settlement is located, I would say, on Liman direction between Seversk and Kupiansk. Territory is DPR. And before I continue, dear friends, and there is quite a number of news that I want to share, let me open this video first. Dear friends, I hope you like my work and want to help preserve this independent media project, and if so, let me go through several means that can be used for assistance. First is a PayPal platform. Once you click on PayPal link under my videos in description box and in the pinned comment, this account will open, which belongs to my wife Anna Philipson Caballero, so feel free to donate through this account. Second way is a Boosty platform, where you can send a tip or donate, which is basically the same, and also you can become a Patreon for the project. You can subscribe to my page while choosing your level of support. Third way is a Patreon platform, where I already have 370 extra content videos. You can also choose your level of monthly support from $5 to 10, 20, 50, 100 and become a Patreon, or you can use another feature that Patreon has, which is access to each videos for a certain amount of money. Now this is $3, so you can access to any video for $3. Relatively new feature that Patreon adopted, and it might be helpful also if for whatever reason you don't want to become a monthly supporter. And there is another way, which is a Rumble platform, dear friends. Whenever I have a pre-planned live stream or live stream is on air, you can become a premium subscriber. You can give premium subscription to other members of the community, or you can use a round feature that Rumble has, which is basically similar to super chat on YouTube. All the links, dear friends, all the links to all these platforms that I just show you are under my videos in the description box and in the pinned comments, including address to crypto wallet. I hope this video will be useful in case you are considering support for my work and this media project. Many thanks to all the members of our community who already supported. Have a wonderful day and take care. Okay. Hopefully this will help to navigate through means of support. If you are interested in supporting my work and this independent media project of mine. And let's go through some other news. Now, TASS News Agency is reporting that, US Vice President JDW made some statements about Ukrainian crisis, statements that can be disputed or, questioned at least. United States believes that their next important step in the process of settling the Ukrainian conflict should be direct contacts between Moscow and Kiev. This was stated by the US Vice President JDW. We have quotes here. And as one would expect, there is a big difference between the positions of Russia and Ukraine, and we believe that the next step in negotiations should be to reduce it, he said, speaking in Washington at the forum organized by the Munich Security Conference. We believe that it probably impossible for us to mediate this issue fully without at least some direct negotiations between the two sides, and that is what we are focused on, stated J.D. Vance. And first of all, let me point your attention to this false narrative that J.D. Vance is pushing, as many other public figures in the US or the Western propaganda outlets, that US is somehow mediator and mediates, right? Which is obviously not true. US is a party of this conflict. Unfortunately, leading member of this anti-Russian coalition that is engaged in a proxy war against Russia, against us, and I really struggle to understand why US leadership is playing these games when they are trying to paint this false picture that they are mediators. Mediators in what? I mean, I don't know. Maybe you have any better reading of the situation, dear friends, then share your opinion. But I really struggle to understand why these games being played by Trump's administration. Obviously, US is not a mediator in no ways. And also, when it comes to direct talks between Moscow and Kiev, well, Russian leadership was very clear, isn't it, that they are open for direct talks. But issue is that Zelensky, while he had some legitimacy, issued a decree to ban any negotiations for Kiev officials, by the way, for all Kiev officials, any negotiations with the Russian side. So therefore, until Kiev regime itself will deal with this legal issue of conducting negotiations to make sure that any talks or any possible agreements will have a legal foundation, there can be no talks, I guess. And the US Vice President should be well informed about that, right? That it's a Kiev regime that on level of decree, presidential decree, banned any talks, any direct talks with Moscow. Russia was always open for negotiations, but it's it's not only up to Moscow, isn't it? So therefore, I don't know, either J.D. Vance is really poorly informed on the situation, or he is just misleading public. I don't know which one is, but yet again, you share your take, dear friends, what you think. But J.D. Vance made few other statements. On one of them, even Trump commented, and I will get to that news. But first, let's take a listen to what another high-ranking official of Trump's administration has to say about Russia and the Russian president.
do you consider, asking the question about Russia, do you consider Vladimir Putin a war criminal?
Yes.
Would you negotiate with a war criminal?
I think that's the nature of diplomacy. One must negotiate with both sides, sir.
So you will be negotiating then with the war criminal?
I believe that negotiation that was needed with the Japanese after World War II.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. Are you familiar with what?
You see, dear friends, this is a Treasury Secretary of US, high-ranking official of Trump's administration, and he is saying that Russian president is a war criminal, and he is going beyond that and comparing Russia with the fascist imperial Japan of Second World War era, which is insult on such a scale that cannot be ever forgiven. When a high-ranking official of Trump's administration is insulting people of Russia while comparing this country to fascist imperial Japan, these days when we here in Russia and in many former republics, in majority of former Soviet republics, are celebrating Victory Day in a great patriotic war, when these days US leadership is comparing our country to this fascist Japanese empire of Second World War era, that is insult beyond imagination. This is just too bad. This is just too bad, and nothing to be said about this baseless claim that Putin is somehow a war criminal. That's a whole different story. And I mean, you tell me, dear friends, what you make of it, and I'm quite sure Russian leadership will react, at least foreign ministry will react on these statements of Scott Bessent, because I mean, this is just really too bad. And you tell me now with whom we are dealing when it comes to US leadership, with what kind of elements, individuals we are dealing. With people that have no respect for history, have no respect for people's struggle, have no respect for dignity, humanity, or with whom? Who are these people? I don't know. I was shocked, by the way. I'm not gonna lie. I was unpleasantly surprised to hear these statements, because this is really beyond anything that it's like it's the same level. If they will associate, they will state that Russia now is like Nazi Germany during the Second World War. I mean, maybe such statements were made by Western high-ranking officials already, and I just did not see it. But I mean, this is first time I see something like that, and this is quite shocking. Unbelievable, man. And you expect Moscow to be optimistic here in regards to any talks with the US administration? Don't know. And this is one of the reasons, by the way, not the only, but one of the reasons why I was skeptical, and I am still skeptical of current so-called talks between Moscow and Washington. US leadership clearly is unable to have any respect to others, and you cannot have a meaningful conversation with someone that has no idea what dignity is, or what decency is, or respect is, and therefore, unfortunately, I have to repeat my earlier what I already said earlier, that most likely we will face next several stages of escalation in this proxy war that West is waging against Russia. Maybe one stage, maybe several of them, before Western ruling class will finally come to their senses and will acknowledge that they have lost this proxy war, and it is truly time to de-escalation. And at that point, maybe some psychological shift will happen in brains of these people, and they will miraculously become more adequate and more respectful. I don't know, is it even possible? Those people to transform into people that have any dignity? I don't know, but unfortunately, one way or another, but I'm afraid we're gonna see next, big escalation before any de-escalation, any real de-escalation will be achieved. And on this very matter, by the way, we have this information from TASS news agency about statements of US President Donald Trump, who actually threatened Russia yesterday, at least indirectly. He did not said I saw video, and he did not said Russia, but that's what he meant, I guess. Let's go through this news. So US President Donald Trump believes that the time has come to make a decision on Ukrainian settlement. He made a correspondent statement during the conversation with journalists at the White House. The American leader commented on the statement by the US Vice President JDW that Russia is allegedly asking far too much in their negotiations on Ukraine. We have a quote here. He may be right, Trump said about J.D. Vance's statement, adding that Vance may know something about this. And another quote, we are approaching a point where some decisions will have to be made. I'm not happy about it, the U.S. President said. And so I don't know how to comment this. Obviously, he means some hostile steps against Russia. Washington may come up with additional another 1,000 sanctions, 2,000 sanctions, 10,000 sanctions. Washington also may further intensify weapons supplies to Kyiv regime, munition supply to Kyiv regime, and money transfers. Washington may actually conduct some terrorist attacks on Russian Federation and Russian interests worldwide. No one would be surprised if that will happen. After all, we know what happened to Nord Stream pipelines during the previous administration of US. So yes, there is definitely certain risks that Washington might create against Russia. Hardly anyone can doubt about it. And hopefully Moscow is listening. And if anyone had any illusions that with the current US administration some agreements may be reached and some sensible negotiations might take place, hopefully those extremely optimistic people have learned their lesson and are realizing that with these people you just cannot have a serious talk. These people cannot be trusted ever. And I'm not against talks between representatives of two countries, but we should keep it real. And not create expectations that are based on not based on objective reality. That will be my comment on that. And when it comes to Russian demands that J.D. Vance and Trump are talking about, well, if you ask me, US has to admit that it is guilty of crimes against Russia. US leadership has to admit that they lost this proxy war against Russia, and US leadership has to agree on concessions before Russia to make sure that Russia on a state level will seek no revenge. And I think this is important. I will not elaborate on that any further, how important it is that Russia will not seek revenge on a state level, at least, right? But it is important. And I will recommend, no one asking my recommendations, but anyways, I will recommend Trump's administration to think about it. Russia is not really demanding nothing. It is in US's best interests to acknowledge that they lost this proxy war, to acknowledge their guilt, and the US is guilty, by the way, in the death of tens of thousands of Russian citizens. US is guilty on a multi-billion harm that was done to Russian economical interests worldwide and inside the Russia. And the US has to agree on the concessions. This is in the best interest of US, and it will be better also if US leadership will stop acting this much. It just really too bad, extremely bad optics for them, and it will be better if they stop acting and if they'll become a little more adequate, because nowadays, it is difficult to take these people seriously, man. That's my comment. Share your opinion, dear friends, but unfortunately, I was saying quite a number of times in previous updates that most likely soon US will start coming up with their extremely hostile statements and their hostile steps, and that's where we are now. Give it another couple of days, weeks, and Trump's administration will act no any different than Biden's administration was acting when it comes to Ukrainian crisis or Washington-Moscow relationships. Just mark my word, difference. This is what is going to happen. But meanwhile, Russia is preparing to celebrate Victory Day in a great patriotic war, and delegations worldwide are coming into Russian Federation in Moscow to participate in Victory Day celebrations. And yesterday, for example, a number of delegations, number of leaders from other countries came in, including Serbian President Alexander Vučić. I shared a video of it on my Telegram and Twitter X page, and later on yesterday, Vučić actually went to Red Square and made some video on Red Square and published it on his social media account. So question is answered, by the way. There was a speculations that Vučić may not come, and because of the pressure from the West, from the globalists and their puppet regimes in Brussels or in UK, France, Germany, and so on. But he made the promise that he will be here in Moscow on 9th of May, and he kept his word. And another European leader that was under extreme pressure and still is under extreme pressure not to come to Moscow is Roberto Fico, Prime Minister of Slovakia. And his plane did not receive permission to fly through Baltic states to come to Russia. And I guess he will use some another path, but he made a statement also that he will come to Moscow despite all the pressure, despite everything. Let's see. I think Fico will come to Moscow also. That will be good for Slovakia, first of all. That will be good for Slovakia, first of all, in my personal opinion, and for the relationships between the peoples of Slovakia and Russia. But as I said, there are many other delegations are obviously coming into Moscow nowadays, and Chinese leader Xi Jinping also has arrived yesterday. He already had some meetings with number of Russian high-ranking officials. Obviously, there are going to be meetings with the Russian president also, who was very busy yesterday, by the way. He was basically almost every another hour was meeting with the president or prime minister of another countries. They were having talks, negotiations, discussions on bilateral relationships and so on major topics. And soon, obviously, today, most likely, Russian president and Chinese leader will have a meeting, and Xi Jinping will stay here in Moscow until 10th of May. So it's a quite longer visit, and number of important documents, according to reports, will be signed during this visit of Chinese leader here. RIA Novosti, meanwhile, is reporting, and obviously another hotspot on this planet is nowadays borderline between India and Pakistan. Unfortunately, both nuclear powers are engaged in a military hostility. India launched yesterday. I reported about Indian strikes on a terrorist infrastructure on the Pakistani territory, and Pakistan retaliated. As a result of these Pakistani retaliatory strikes, Indian officials stated that at least 11 civilians were killed. Pakistani side claimed that at least 70 civilians were killed as a result of Indian strikes. Later on yesterday, footage was shared on the internet about alleged ballistic missile launches that Pakistan was conducting to strike India. So situation is clearly escalating between their sides, which is obviously tragic for both people of both countries and for entire world, because any war is a tragedy, obviously, and especially war between nuclear states. Let's hope sides will manage to disengage and to de-escalate, but anything is possible at this point. And Pakistani leadership was also claimed that they managed to intercept 5 Indian aircraft, fighter jets, 3 Rafale, French-made Rafale fighter jets. On internet, some video and photo materials were shared, and if some of those materials at least are not AI generated, some false videos and false pictures, then well, it is a possibility in that case that yes, maybe French Rafale planes were shut down by Pakistani Air Force and their defense systems. Let's see what additional information we will have about it in upcoming days. And what is also interesting, according to some media outlets, by the way, at one point, over 100 planes of India and Pakistan were engaged in a dogfight, which is hard to believe. So we should take this information with a pinch of salt. But I believe even CNN reported about it, that over 100, about 150, according to some reports, even more than 150 planes from both sides were engaged in a dogfight, air-to-air combat, and obviously this is not a Second World War type air-to-air combat, not with the guns or close-range missiles. No, this was a long-range engagement, and according to reports, some missiles were launched from 150 kilometers away. Let's see if we will find out something more about this. But if this report is true, then I guess after Second World War, this air combat gonna go down in history as the biggest, largest dogfight since the Second World War. There's a quite high chances on that, because I don't remember any other military conflict where 150 fighter jets were engaged in simultaneously in air-to-air combat. So that's additional news that is coming in. Let's hope New Delhi and Islamabad will manage to de-escalate, and it will not. This conflict will not transform into all-out war, which is going to be total tragedy for all of humanity. Vzglyad newspaper is reporting that, U.S. President Donald Trump again, dear friends, in the headlines, and for all the wrong reasons, really. And in this particular case, because he plans to rename Persian Gulf. And this is not a joke, by the way. I mean, Trump has some fetish remaining geographical areas, and who knows what else. And now we are receiving reports that U.S. President Donald Trump intends to announce the renaming of the Persian Gulf in official U.S. documents during his visit to Saudi Arabia. This was reported by Associated Press originally. And he intends to called Persian Gulf, Arabian Gulf in official documents. I mean, okay, but this is a bit too much, isn't it? What do you think, dear friends? This is kind of bit too much. But yet again, I mean, at this point, we are living in such wild times that quite often we are receiving news that it's even hard to comment because it's just too crazy. And this news is definitely one of those. Okay. Maybe tomorrow Trump will call himself alien and will demand everyone to call him alien. Anyways, this Grand newspaper is reporting, dear friends, that well, obviously Western so-called elites, globalists, are extremely not happy due to Russia-Chinese close ties, and because Chinese leader is visiting Russian Federation, as many other world leaders do. And well, New York Times come up with an article that Xi Jinping's May 9 Moscow visit will complicate China-Europe relations. So let's go through several sentences at least in this news. Chinese leader Xi Jinping's visit to Moscow, where he will be the main guest at the Victory Day parade. I mean, I don't think he will be main guest, sir. All the guests gonna be main. All the guests gonna be treated well and respectfully as it should. But anyways, that's what New York Times is writing, right? So Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Moscow, where he will be main guest at the Victory Day parade, and all the talks with the Russian President Vladimir Putin could complicate Beijing's efforts to improve relations with Europe. New York Times writes. The showpiece meeting between the leaders of Russia and China underscored the close alliance between the two countries, as their ongoing special operation in Ukraine has raised concerns among European leaders, while Beijing has positioned itself as a force for stability, aimed trade wars and discord between the United States and its allies. And by the way, I guess Xi Jinping or Chinese leadership with this visit already answered the question that New York Times is kind of asking about potential difficulties in relationships between China and Europe. I guess Beijing is demonstrating its priorities, and European Union, European economy, I guess, not as important for China as some elements in Europe might think, or in the collective West in general. Otherwise, probably Chinese leader would make different decision. And it is also a question: is China needs Europe more, or Chinese economy needs European economy more, or it's other way around? European economies need Chinese economy. Which one is? Both are benefiting, being engaged. That's obvious. But when it comes to dependence, well, that's a whole different story, isn't it? And if European businesses somehow lost Chinese market too now, and if they lost Chinese investments, then I think that's going to be absolute devastation for European economies. So therefore, I don't think Brussels bureaucrats gonna make too much noise about Chinese leaders visiting Moscow. They are just in no position to act tough with Beijing. I mean, it is what it is, right? And in any case, Beijing made the decision that relationships with Russia are much more important for China than relationships with the European Union, which is destined to fail, by the way. We all understand this. So therefore, I'm quite sure China is and will be more focused on bilateral relationships with the countries of the EU. But when it comes to Brussels and Europe, EU bureaucracy, why should China pay too much attention to them? I don't know. And when it comes to separate countries of the EU, Well, we have this report, for example, that Hungary slams EU plan to halt Russian energy imports, claiming that this is absolute insanity. So the European Commission's plan to completely phase out Russian fuel imports violates the sovereignty of the EU member states by depriving them of the right to choose their energy sources, according to Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó. Brussels has outlined their plans to end the bloc's energy reliance on Moscow by completely eliminating imports of oil, gas, and nuclear fuel in the coming years. Before end of 2027, and I reported about this in the previous updates, Hungary obtains over 80% of its gas from Russia via pipeline, with LNG playing a supplementary role. Budapest has continued to strengthen its energy ties with Moscow despite the sanctions introduced by the EU in the wake of Ukrainian conflict. And we have a quote here from Peter Szijjártó: the forced artificially ideological based exclusion of natural gas, crude oil, and nuclear fuel originating from Russia will lead to severe price increase in Europe, seriously harming the sovereignty of European countries and cause major difficulties for European companies, Szijjártó said in a video he shared on his Facebook page on Tuesday, adding that what was announced is absolute insanity. And well, who in a straight mind will disagree with Szijjártó, by the way? Of course, Brussels' initiative to cut all ties with Russia or in terms of cooperation in the energy sector or any other sector is a complete insanity. But what else you should expect from insane people that are in charge of EU, by the way? Only insanity, right? Only insane decisions. And that's exactly what is happening. And this is one of the reasons why I'm saying that EU is destined to failure, by the way, and only countries that are current member of EU that have any solid future is countries that will manage to maintain good working relationships with Russia, good working relationships with China, with other countries, by the way, in this world without transferring to Brussels too much of their sovereignty. Because they will lose decision-making rights about future of their own countries, will be basically beginning of their end of their countries and their societies, I guess, right? And Hungarian leadership understands that, and that's why they are opposing this dictatorial attitude of Brussels when Brussels unelected bureaucrats are dictating to EU member states what to do, when, and how. And I will end this update on that, dear friends. Hopefully you will find this episode informative and useful. I was hoping that update would be around 35 minutes, but anyways, hopefully you will like it. And if so, please don't forget to click that like button and leave some commentary. If you have not yet, that might help to deal with the algorithm and to reach wide audience. Please share video with your friends on internet or any other way, or share information about the existence of my channel with your friends. And well, if you will manage, please join our live stream this evening on my Rumble channel at 7 o'clock. It's going to be an interesting evening news update that are always packed with the latest reports. So I hope to see you there. And if you want to support, dear friends, all the links are on this video description box and in the pinned comment. This is it for now. Have a wonderful day and take care.